Isioma had just married the man she loved, Chijioke, and dreamed of starting a happy new life with his family. With a pure heart and hopeful smile, she moved into her husband's family house, believing she would be welcomed like a daughter. But from the first day, her mother-in-law, Mama Ebel, looked at her with cold eyes. She never hid her dislike, always reminding everyone that Isioma came from a poor home. Each morning, when Isioma greeted her politely, Mama Ebel would roll her eyes and mutter words that cut deep. She criticized the way Isioma cooked, dressed, and even spoke, making her feel like an unwanted visitor instead of a new bride. Chijioke, the man she trusted most, stayed silent through it all. He would lower his head whenever his mother insulted Isioma, pretending not to hear. The once lively girl became quiet, hiding her pain behind a forced smile. She tried to please her mother-in-law in every way, cleaning the compound early, cooking her favorite meals, and never talking back. But no matter how kind she was, Mama Ebel only found new ways to make her feel small. The neighbors could hear the sharp words and see Isioma's tears, but no one dared to interfere. One stormy evening, things got worse. Rain poured heavily as thunder roared. Mama Ebel's anger exploded, and she shouted in front of everyone that Isioma was a shame to the family. She threw her belongings outside and called her a burden who brought nothing but misfortune. Heartbroken, Isioma walked out in the rain barefoot, holding only her handbag. She had nowhere to go, but she promised herself she would never beg to be accepted again. That same night, as she sat alone and wept, her phone rang. It was her late father's lawyer. He told her the will had finally been settled, and she needed to come the next morning. Shocked and confused, Isioma listened carefully, unaware that her life was about to change forever. The pain she had suffered was about to turn into strength. By morning, the same people who had thrown her out would stand speechless, realizing they had insulted the true owner of everything they claimed. Every single day in the house felt like walking on broken glass for Isioma. From the moment she woke up till the time she closed her eyes, Mama Ebel found new ways to make her feel unwanted. At breakfast, she would remind Isioma that she was not from a real family. During chores, she would complain that Isioma's hands were too soft for hard work. At dinner, she would say loudly that her son deserved a wife with class, not a girl from a poor background. Isioma tried to ignore the hurtful words, but each insult cut deeper than the last. She would force a smile and whisper polite replies, hoping one day Mama Ebel would soften her heart, but that day never came. Chijioke, her husband, stayed quiet through it all. He would sit in the same room, hearing everything, but never said a word to defend his wife. His silence hurt more than the insults. Sometimes Isioma would look at him, hoping for just one kind word or a little support, but he would avoid her eyes. It was as if he feared his mother more than he loved his wife. Slowly, the joy in Isioma's heart began to fade. She became withdrawn, talking less, working more, trying to earn the love she deserved. But Mama Ebel always found fault in everything she did. If she cooked, the food was too salty. If she cleaned, it was not spotless enough. Even visitors noticed how cruelly the old woman treated her. Some would whisper behind her back, while others simply pitied her. Yet Isioma never lost her dignity. She would greet everyone kindly and serve them with respect, even when her own heart was breaking. Late at night, she would cry silently, praying for strength to survive another day in that house. The pain became her constant companion, and her husband's silence felt like betrayal. But what no one knew was that Isioma's patience was not weakness. It was strength building quietly inside her. Though Mama Ebel tried to crush her spirit, life had its own plans. The woman everyone looked down on would soon stand tall, and those who mocked her would one day wish they had treated her better. On a stormy evening, the sky was dark and heavy with thunder as rain began to fall hard on the roof. Inside the house, Mama Ebel's anger boiled over like never before. She shouted so loud that even the neighbors came out to listen. Her voice was filled with hate as she called Isioma names that pierced deep into her heart. She accused her of bringing nothing but shame to their family, saying her presence was a curse. In front of everyone, she pointed at her and screamed that she was a burden who had no value. The servants stood frozen, afraid to move, while Chijioke sat quietly in the corner, pretending not to hear. Mama Ebel's fury only grew stronger as the rain poured harder. She grabbed Isioma's small box of clothes, threw it outside, and told her to leave the house immediately. "Get out," she shouted. "You came with nothing and you'll leave with nothing." Her words cut like knives. Isioma's heart felt heavy, but she didn't fight back. She stood there in silence, tears mixing with the rain that splashed through the open door. Everyone watched, but no one dared to help. Even her husband turned his face away, ashamed but too weak to stand up for her. With trembling hands, Isioma picked up her handbag and stepped outside barefoot. The cold rain hit her skin, but the pain in her heart hurt even more. She walked slowly through the muddy path, her clothes soaked, her spirit broken. Every step felt like the end of everything she once believed in. She had left her home to find love and family, but all she found was rejection. Still, deep inside, she refused to hate. As she walked away in the rain, she whispered to herself that she would rise again. That night, she slept in a small shelter near the main road, holding her bag close and crying quietly. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but fate was already preparing something bigger than her pain. What looked like her worst night was only the beginning of her greatest change, one that would leave everyone who mocked her speechless. With tears in her eyes, Isioma walked away from the house that had once been her dream home, but had now turned into her greatest pain. The rain was still falling, soaking her from head to toe, yet she kept moving. Her feet were bare, stepping into the cold mud, but she didn't care. She held her small handbag tightly to her chest, as if it carried the last piece of her life. Behind her, the voices of laughter and mockery echoed faintly. Mama Ebel had finally gotten what she wanted, Isioma out of her house. No one came after her. Not even Chijiok, the man she once believed would stand beside her no matter what. The road ahead was dark and lonely. The streetlights flickered weakly, and the sound of thunder rolled across the sky. Every drop of rain on her face mixed with the tears she could no longer control. She thought about everything she had endured, the harsh words, the endless humiliation, the silence of the man who was supposed to love her. Her heart broke again as she realized she had nothing left there to fight for. Yet deep inside, a quiet strength began to grow. She told herself that no matter how dark the night was, she would not let it destroy her. When she reached the main road, she stopped under a small tree and sat down. The world felt so still, and for the first time in a long while, she could hear her own breathing. She looked up at the cloudy sky and whispered a short prayer, asking her late father to give her courage. She didn't know where she would go or what she would do next, but she refused to return to that house of pain. Hours passed before the rain finally stopped. Isioma stood up again, her clothes still wet, her body trembling, but her spirit slowly finding peace. She walked toward a small shelter by the roadside and decided to rest there for the night. She didn't know that her life was about to change completely. What she saw as the end of everything was actually the beginning of something greater than she could imagine. That night, as Isioma sat alone under the dim light of a small shelter, her heart felt heavy from all the pain she had endured. The sound of raindrops on the roof slowly faded, leaving only the echo of her thoughts. She stared at her wet clothes and swollen feet, wondering how everything had fallen apart so quickly. Just a few months ago, she was a bride full of dreams. Now she was a woman with nowhere to go. Her phone buzzed suddenly, breaking the silence. She almost ignored it, thinking it was another cruel message from someone in her husband's family. But when she saw the caller's name, she froze. It was her late father's lawyer. Her hands trembled as she answered. The lawyer's calm voice came through, telling her that her father's will had finally been settled after years of delay. He explained that her father had left her something important, and she needed to come to his office the next morning to sign the final documents. For a moment, Isioma couldn't speak. Tears rolled down her cheeks again, but this time they weren't from pain, they were from hope. She hadn't heard anyone speak kindly to her in so long, and now this voice brought light into her darkest hour. She thanked him softly and ended the call, holding the phone close to her heart. Memories of her father flooded her mind, his gentle smile, his words of encouragement, how he always told her that she was stronger than she believed. For the first time that night, she smiled faintly through her tears. Maybe life hadn't forgotten her after all. As she looked out into the quiet night, the moon peeked through the clouds, shining softly on her face. It felt like a sign from her father, reminding her that she was never truly alone. She lay down to rest, feeling a strange peace settle inside her. Tomorrow would be different. She didn't know what awaited her at the lawyer's office, but deep inside, she felt that the pain she had suffered was about to turn into something powerful. something that would make everyone who once looked down on her remember her name forever. The next morning, the sound of car engines filled the quiet compound. Everyone rushed outside, wondering who could be arriving with such style. 3 shiny black cars rolled through the gate, their tires crunching against the gravel. The guards opened the doors quickly, and people gasped when they saw Ayanda step out. She looked completely different. Her wet, torn clothes from the night before were gone. Now she stood tall, wearing an elegant dress that glowed under the morning sun. Her face carried calm confidence, her hair neatly styled and her posture full of grace. Behind her, several officials followed, holding documents and briefcases, while security men stood by respectfully. Mama Ebel's eyes widened in disbelief. She rubbed them, thinking she must be dreaming. The same girl she threw out barefoot last night was now standing like a queen in front of her. Chijiok stood frozen beside his mother, his mouth slightly open, unsure of what to say. Neighbors peeked through their fences, whispering and pointing. The compound that once echoed with insults was now filled with silence and tension. Ayanda didn't shout or smile with pride. She simply walked in slowly, her steps steady and graceful. The officials greeted everyone politely and introduced themselves as representatives of her late father's estate. They said they were here to fulfill legal duties concerning inherited property. The words alone sent confusion through the crowd. Mama Ebel frowned, trying to understand what was happening. Chijiok tried to step forward, asking, Ayanda, what's all this? But she didn't reply immediately. Instead, she turned toward the lawyer who had come with her. The man opened a file and prepared to speak. Everyone's eyes moved between him and Ayanda, waiting for answers. The woman who had once been treated like nothing now commanded every eye in the room. Her quiet return felt more powerful than any revenge. In that moment, everyone could see that this was not the same broken girl who had left in tears. She had come back stronger, carrying dignity that spoke louder than wealth. The storm that had pushed her out last night had also washed away her fear. And now, as the lawyer cleared his throat, the truth about who truly owned everything around them was about to be revealed. The lawyer adjusted his glasses, opened the brown folder in his hands, and spoke clearly so everyone could hear. He announced that he was representing the estate of the late Chief Abadike, Ayanda's father. The moment he mentioned her father's name, people began to murmur. Mama Ebel's face tightened as she exchanged nervous glances with her son. The lawyer continued, explaining that the final will had been read and approved by the court. According to the legal documents, Ayanda was declared the sole inheritor of all her father's wealth, every property, business, and investment he left behind. A gasp spread through the compound. But the biggest shock came when the lawyer mentioned that the land and house where the family was currently living were part of Chief Abadike's estate, meaning they now legally belonged to Ayanda. Silence fell instantly. The same people who had mocked her just hours before now stared at her in disbelief. Mama Ebel's hands began to shake. "That's not possible," she shouted, her voice trembling. But the lawyer calmly showed her the official papers, signed and sealed by the court. He explained that the land had originally been leased to her husband years ago by Ayanda's father, and now, through inheritance, it belonged completely to her. Chijiok swallowed hard, unable to meet his wife's eyes. His pride vanished in an instant. Ayanda stood quietly through it all, her face calm but her presence powerful. She didn't need to raise her voice. The truth spoke for her. The same ground where she had been insulted and thrown out now legally belonged to her. Neighbors gathered outside the gate, whispering in shock. Some even began to smile secretly, proud of the young woman who had faced humiliation yet returned in strength. Mama Ebel slowly sat on the ground, clutching her wrapper, speechless. Chijiok tried to speak, but words failed him. The lawyer finished reading and handed Ayanda the documents, saying softly, "Congratulations, Ma. Everything now belongs to you." Ayanda thanked him politely and turned toward the house. Her eyes scanned the walls that once witnessed her pain, and a small, peaceful smile appeared on her face. Life had given her justice without her asking for it. Mama Ebel's eyes widened as the lawyer's words echoed through the compound. Her hands trembled so much that the wrapper tied around her waist slipped and fell to the ground, but she didn't even notice. Everyone watched in stunned silence. The proud woman who once shouted at Ayanda now stood frozen, her mouth open but no words coming out. Her face turned pale as she tried to make sense of everything. The same daughter-in-law she had called useless was now the owner of the house she lived in. Neighbors whispered among themselves, shaking their heads in disbelief. The once loud compound had turned completely quiet, except for the sound of the lawyer folding his papers. Chijioke looked around helplessly, his heart pounding fast. His throat went dry as he finally understood what had just been said. For years, he had believed he was the man of the house, but now the truth hit him hard. The property he was so proud of actually belonged to his wife. His legs felt weak, and sweat gathered on his forehead. He stammered, trying to say something, but his voice cracked. I didn't know. Isioma, you never told me, he whispered. But Isioma remained silent, her calmness louder than any reply. Mama Ebel bent slowly to pick up her wrapper, her hands shaking. Her pride had shattered into pieces. The same woman who once bragged about her family's wealth was now standing in a house she no longer owned. The neighbors who had witnessed all the insults now looked at Isioma with admiration. They couldn't believe how tables had turned so quickly. Isioma looked around at the faces that once pitted her. There was no anger in her eyes, only quiet strength. The people who thought she was beneath them were now the ones standing in shame. Chijioke couldn't meet her gaze. Guilt filled his heart. Everything around him, the walls, the land, even the furniture, was hers. The truth had stripped away every ounce of his pride. The silence in the compound felt heavy, like the air itself was holding its breath. And in that stillness, everyone realized one thing. The woman they once threw away had come back with power, and nothing would ever be the same again. Isioma stood still, her calm voice cutting through the heavy silence that filled the compound. Everyone turned toward her as she looked directly at Mama Ebel. Her tone was soft but firm, her words clear. You told me I didn't belong here, Mama, she said slowly, her eyes steady. But the truth is, this place has always been mine. The words hung in the air, powerful and undeniable. The same woman who was once insulted and thrown out now spoke with quiet confidence that silenced everyone. No one dared to move or speak. Even the birds seemed to pause, as if the world itself wanted to hear her finish. Mama Ebele's lips trembled. She couldn't find a single word to reply. Her son, Chijioke, looked down, unable to face his wife. Shame washed over him as he realized how blind he had been. Isioma didn't raise her voice or gloat. She simply stood there, graceful and composed, her strength shining brighter than her pain. The lawyer and the officials watched in silence, impressed by her dignity. Neighbors gathered by the fence, whispering in amazement. They remembered how she was thrown out in the rain, barefoot and crying. Now she stood tall, dressed like a woman of class, surrounded by respect. Her comeback was not loud or angry. It was peaceful but powerful, the kind that leaves a deep mark on every heart watching. Mama Ebel finally dropped her gaze, tears forming in her eyes. She had spent so long humiliating Isioma, never imagining that the girl she despised had been the true owner all along. The ground beneath her feet now belonged to the same person she had once called worthless. It was a moment of complete reversal, a reminder that pride always falls before truth. Isioma took a deep breath, her expression softening. She wasn't there for revenge, she only wanted peace. Her words had already spoken louder than anger ever could. She looked around the compound one last time and said gently, I never wanted to take anything from anyone. I only wanted love. Her voice carried warmth and strength together, proving that real power lies not in wealth or pride, but in grace, forgiveness, and knowing your true worth. Instead of seeking revenge, Isioma took a deep breath and looked at everyone with calm eyes. The anger that could have filled her heart was gone. She had been humiliated, thrown out, and disrespected, yet she chose peace over bitterness. Standing in the same compound where she once cried in pain, she now spoke softly, her voice steady. She told Mama Ebel and Chijioke that she forgave them. Her words were gentle, but carried the weight of everything she had endured. I don't hate you, she said quietly. I just learned that love cannot grow where respect does not live. Those simple words touched everyone who heard them. Even the neighbors watching from the gate wiped their eyes, moved by her grace. Mama Ebel could not stop her tears. She knelt before Isioma, apologizing again and again, but Isioma only helped her up, saying there was no need for more sorrow. Chijioke stood in silence, his heart heavy with regret. He realized too late what kind of woman he had lost, one with a heart stronger than gold. The officials finished their work and handed over the property papers to Isioma, but she didn't brag or celebrate. She simply thanked them politely and told the family they could keep living there. She no longer wanted the house that carried so much pain. A few days later, Isioma packed her things and left the compound quietly. No rain, no shouting, no tears, only peace. A driver opened the door of her new car as she stepped in with her head held high. The woman who once walked out barefoot was now leaving with dignity and strength. She had found a new home in the city, where people treated her with respect and kindness. In her new life, Isioma started a charity in her father's name to help women who had suffered like her. Her story spread across town, inspiring many to rise above hate and choose grace. People admired her not because of her wealth, but because of her heart. She had shown everyone that true power is not in revenge or pride, but in forgiveness. Her silence, her dignity, and her strength spoke louder than any insult ever could. Hi, besties, two hearts, thank you so much for watching till the very end. Cherry Blossom, if you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like, thumbs up, drop a sweet comment, speech balloon, and hit that subscribe button bell for more emotional and inspiring tales. See you in the next one, sparkling heart. Bye.